About 1,000 far-right activists took to London streets vowing to protect historic monuments that have been targeted on the fringes of recent Black Lives Matter marches. About 100 people were involved in the Trafalgar Square clashes. The demonstration was due to end with a march to Parliament, but this has been called off because of the violence. Britain's Home Secretary Priti Patel labelled the incidents as thoroughly unacceptable thuggery. So, as we mentioned, the far right-wing group in the UK threatening now to tear down statues, including that of global statesman and founding father of our democracy, Nelson Mandela. That statue and that of Mahatma Gandhi have been boarded up so far. It comes after a statue of slave owner Edward Colston was pulled down and thrown into a river during a protest in support of the George Floyd demonstrations. For some reaction now, we on the line, or rather speak to Sello Hatang, the CEO of the Nelson Mandela Foundation, via Skype. A very good evening to you, Mr. Hatang, and thank you so much for speaking to us. So the far-right group Britain First is saying that they are guarding our monuments, as they call them, and just your understanding of what is really behind this. If one is going to target the statue of Nelson Mandela, if far-right elements in Britain, they feel that they must protect their monument. Does it speak really to the deep divide, the racial divides in the UK and around the globe, if I might say?
Thank you very much for this opportunity, SABC. You've nailed it right at the end of your comment, because these are people who represent a society that we used to be, people that we don't want to be represented as. And I think if we are to do anything as the society that is pro-democracy, society that is against racial hatred, and also which stands for what progressive nations should be, we should then be saying to them that statues that represent that past can be done away with, so that we can then try and ensure that those who are still to be born know that what was happening was abnormal, that those statues belong in a museum. What I found difficult to actually accept was how some of the statues were thrown in the sea, for example. It would be good if those are kept in a museum instead of them almost insulting to the nations that we're trying to be and the people that we're trying to be.
And as an archivist yourself, you say it's best that these would be kept in a monument. So history, I imagine, is what you're saying, still plays an important role, whether or not we like it, accept it or not. There are those who are saying that you need to have empathy for your foes. So are you then agreeing that whether we agree to disagree, at the end of the day, we still need to shine a spotlight on those figures who have brought us to this point in our global order?
But they don't have to. They don't have to be seen to be almost insulting those who are saying we don't want to be reminded daily of this kind of past. A good example is the flag. The old South African flag. One of the reasons we took it up, and we never said it should be banned, for example. We said it can be displayed in documentaries, you can have it in a museum, you can have it as a piece of archive, but that it shouldn't be seen as a piece that can always be used against those who are trying to say we can be better people. We don't have to be reminded of people that we used to be, and it then gets displayed publicly to almost insult you if you are a person who are oppressed by that symbol, by that flag, by that person who's represented by that museum, by that piece of history, in other words.
I want you to reflect on something. In an opinion piece, somebody said that, make no mistake, a Black Lives Matter movement is a radical neo-Marxist political movement. Obviously, there are some strong ideological differences on, I would say, both sides of the lines. There are many angles to this, many perspectives. But for some, it's because of broken promises. Is it because politicians keep on locking us into these ideological dreams, which are then never delivered on?
You know what, that's one of the difficulties that we're struggling with as society, where if you look at fees must fall, for example. I liked one of the posters that was used by one of the students who said, "You promised our parents a free education. We are here to claim those promises." And I think you've nailed it again, because we need to be careful how we craft the society we want to be. And part of that is bringing honesty into politics, that politicians need to be a little more honest about what they can and what they can't achieve. And most of the time you find that when people are disgruntled by what they were promised, that's not delivered. You then have a problem where people feel, well, it's time for you to deliver. You didn't give me what you promised me, therefore I'm going to hit the streets. And that's why the Nelson Mandela Foundation recently said that all of us need to heed the call of people who are saying Black Lives Matter, because for so long we have been saying these things and it's not mattered. And we need to now be reckoning with the past that we used to be, but saying what kind of future we want.
We had our own radical movement, that of fees must fall, and if I recall, it was over also scrapping colonial curricula at our institutions of higher learning or general of learning. And yet there are those who are part of the movement, those who are watching the movement, saying, yes, it really was a good pinprick, but it didn't really lance the boil, that there's still a lot to be done. So if we talk about those symbols, those monuments, proverbial or not, that we are building our transitional democracy, how do we turn the mirror on ourselves and say, this is what we need to deliver on right now without any further delay?
You know, if there's one thing that we can be grateful for in terms of COVID-19, is that it's helping us hold that mirror so close to our faces, that we cannot run away from the fact that we had normalized poverty, we had normalized inequality, we had normalized gender-based violence, and we had normalized the abuse of alcohol, for example. And now it's holding that mirror so tight to our faces that we now have to reckon with that, to say, actually, the poor have always been there. They've been struggling to make ends meet. I mean, I can give you, if you can indulge me here, we went to Limpopo, we threw each one feed one with the Mbumba Foundation and Kolisi Foundation. And when we got there, we found this 70-plus-year-old who is still without an ID. As a result, doesn't get any pension benefits whatsoever. Now the community has had to look after her month after month. So it means that for so long, the community has been carrying someone that actually the state should be contributing towards looking after. And I think COVID is now saying there are these issues that we must reckon with, including racism, by the way, because suddenly, maybe I used the wrong word there when I say suddenly, but most of these racists are now coming out of the woodwork again, showing their faces. It must be because the sense of privilege that they've had and enjoyed for so long suddenly feels even more threatened, because jobs are being lost and all these things. And it's now meaning that what used to be normalized for the majority, this minority now feels the pinch too. So I think when I answer your question directly, these poverty, inequality, racism, xenophobia, all these need to be faced head on today and not tomorrow.
Thank you so much. Sello Hatang is the CEO of the Nelson Mandela Foundation. How do you answer the question about the monuments that we still have standing in our towns, our cities, our country? What do they mean to you? Are they of any relevance to you? What do they represent?